Welcome back to this portion of Active Living. We're very fortunate to have another member of the Viet Nam veterans here with us today. His name is Randy Stetson. Welcome, Randy.
Thank you for having me.
And we'd like to talk to you a little bit about your military experience. I know that you were in Vietnam and you're very active with the VFW located up in the Oxford area.
Yes.
And so tell us, when did you join the service?
I was drafted. So I didn't have a choice, so I had to go in. But I did like the Army. It was a good experience for me. I mean, even though the action that I've seen, it wasn't the best part of it, but
right.
But all in all, it was a good spot to be in.
So when did you go in? What year was this?
I went in I was drafted in 1968.
Okay.
And I went through training, Fort Knox, Kentucky. Then I had advanced training in Fort Polk, Louisiana, which at that time they called it the Little Vietnam. It was the worst place a soldier could go, but it was the best training.
Really? So when you talk about advanced training, I assume this is advanced combat training.
Yes, yeah.
And what do you learn there? I mean, do you learn to use different weapons, or?
Pretty much we learned all hand weapons that are in by the United States Army or the defense, whatever they have, we learned to operate those particular weapons.
Right.
At that time, because now they're really sophisticated, but at that time they were sophisticated too. So, but we've learned a lot by operating those weapons. So, M14s, M16s, Law, M79s, AK-47s. We had to learn on them too.
Okay. So now, in the advanced training, you said it was kind of like the worst place you could be. Is this like a simulated Vietnam with like a jungle type of environment?
Yes, it was a jungle type of environment. You had to go through, if you got caught, going through approaching an enemy bunker or whatever, or the village, and you got caught, they would put you through like a semi-torture type of thing. So you wouldn't want to get caught. So.
Okay. Okay, so you go through the advanced training. Now what happens?
Well, after advanced training, that's when you more or less receive your orders as to where you're going to go.
Right.
And I was hoping I'd go to Germany.
Yeah.
But I didn't go to Germany. I knew I was going to go to Vietnam, and I went to Vietnam. I landed in Vietnam in tail end of '68, and I landed in Bien Hoa.
Okay.
That was our area of operation. We had area of operation which was War Zone D and War Zone C we operated in. And I was under the command of, you've heard of General Patton in World War II?
Oh, yeah.
Old Blood and Guts?
Yes.
Well, I was under his son.
Really?
Yes.
And his son is probably trying to outdo his dad, right?
Well, he did a good job. I don't think he could outdo him, but he did a very good job. He wound up as a general too, but at that time he was only a colonel.
Okay.
And I had a lieutenant in the Army who was my lieutenant. He wound up as the Secretary of the Army under Bush II. I'm not sure if he was 42 or 41.
Okay.
But he wound up as Secretary of the Army. So I was really impressed when I found that out.
So you taught him well.
Yeah, I guess, or he taught me, either way. But he was a good man.
So now you land there, and I assume you're assigned to a division of some type or a company?
Yes, I was assigned to the 11th Air Cab, which is a special operations unit. Basically, over there at the time, the particular part of it that I was in was called an ARP, or an Long-Range Reconnaissance Patrol.
Okay.
I wound up in that particular type of unit. I didn't know I was going to wind up in that unit,
okay,
but I did volunteer for it. And I remember going into the finance department in Vietnam, and I was with my two other guys there that I was with, and these other guys come in, and they got these camouflage uniforms on, and I'm looking at it, and I said, hey, look at those guys, man, they really been through the battle, you know, or whatever. And then they look at the finance officer, then he looks at us, and he starts walking over to us, and he walks over to us, and he says, welcome. So that was a unit that I wound up in. So.
When you say advanced reconnaissance, that means that you go out in advance of any combat action that's going to be taking place.
Right. We were a recon outfit. Basically, our area of operation, we had to be airlifted with a helicopter into the areas what we went into to recon and work our way in and find out any type of enemy activity. If we found an activity, either we would hold our ground or not be seen, hopefully. But
Right.
most of the times we were seen and hold our ground, and then we'd radio in for heavier artillery or whatever they'd pull us out, and then we'd wind up going somewhere else.
So basically, you guys were airlifted into enemy territory.
Yes.
And dropped behind enemy lines if there was such a thing in Vietnam.
Well, there really wasn't, but you
No, I
just
know
had to
there
really
wasn't, but-
search through the jungle and find these guys. We had a famous saying, but I won't say it. I don't think it'd be proper to say it on
We might be
TV.
able to bleep it out. Who knows? But anyway, it sounds to me like a pretty dangerous job.
Yes, it was a dangerous job. Your life expectancy wasn't very long. That's why they needed quite a few men. So
Few recruits.
recruits, right?
Right, right. So you end up going back there, and I assume you get in some firefights.
I've been in several firefights. I had where we were pinned down for hours and no water, and water was like gold. You know,
Yeah,
it was like being
yeah.
out in the desert. And
Yeah, Jim mentioned that when he was here a little while
Yeah,
earlier.
water
that
was-
water was the
very important. We always carried like two regular canteens and one jumbo. We traveled light. We didn't travel. We never wore a helmet or a flak jacket over there. I was always traveling light, mostly with ammunition and our radio.
okay.
And everyone took a chant at the radio. Everybody had to carry the radio because that weighed 35 pounds.
Wow.
So,
And today is probably the size of a cell phone,
yeah,
right?
it's really nice today, I would imagine. So,
Yeah.
So,
So now you're dropped behind enemy lines, and you spot some activity. Now what happens?
well, we basically would radio in to our main base of operation, which would be, they used to call it, I think it was S2, which
Right.
was intelligence. And they tell us what they want us to do. You know, we tell them, well, it's not too active, so we would basically start a fight and try to see how many enemy and what kind of firepower they would have.
So,
So
you guys would go out there and actually start
our job was to
the
make trouble.
activity.
It was trouble.
So
Our
you're
job
like
was
you're,
trouble.
you're like bait sitting out there,
Yeah, exactly.
trying to bait the
Yeah.
enemy to
Yeah.
come and
Yeah, in some situations, yes, it was.
boy, that sounds like a dangerous job.
It was.
So now you get into these firefights. I assume you're calling in some kind of artillery at times.
There were times we called in artillery. There was one time we called artillery in, and they called it in too soon, and we were still on the ground. And finally we got back to the main base and told them to hold it, you know, as far as
Right.
not shooting, because they hadn't picked us up yet. Otherwise, if we would have been still there, we would have been completely annihilated. All
Right.
of us would have been killed by friendly fire.
Jeez.
So, but fortunately, we were picked up and taken out and taken to another area. So,
Right. So you've got these firefights going on, and you're involved in these, and you've got some wounds, I understand.
yes, I was wounded.
And can you tell us a little bit about what happened?
I was wounded, hit down. Well, I was wounded prior to this. I was wounded. Actually, I was wounded twice prior to this.
Really?
I have 2 Purple Hearts.
Wow.
Well, there's a lot of guys that had many more than that. So, and then what they call the $1 million wound here is where I lost my arm and I was hit down the right side, and that's called the $1 million wound. That's basically the wound that's going to send you home, and there'll
Okay.
be no more combat for you.
But a normal, if you got hit in the arm or something and it was a flesh wound,
Yeah,
you'd probably bundle it up and keep fighting.
that's exactly what they did. They
Yeah.
stitch you up and send you back out.
Wow.
So maybe give you a day off. So.
Jeez. What happened with the arm? Can you?
I can go into a little bit of that. I don't really like to talk about a whole lot. But,
Okay, then I
but
won't.
it's fine. I'll talk. I mean, I was approached the bunker complex. So we went into. It was heavily fortified, and we got really pinned down. It was more active than we realized, and we were already destroying bunkers in the area, but they were older bunkers.
Okay.
Then we ran across some newer bunkers, and they were active, and that kind of pinned us down. I had 3 men that were pinned down by a bunker, and they're kind of seriously wounded. So I had to take the bunker out. I took the bunker out, and pulled the 3 men back to what they call a bomb crater at that time. It was
Right.
After B-52s would go in, there'd be bomb craters all over the place.
Right.
But we used that as a place for I could bring them to, and I took them there and took the bunker out. And then we had a load ship that was trying to come in to pick up these wounded men, and he was hit with an RPG, and it crashed and landed and blew up.
Wow.
But the 3 men that I pulled out are alive.
Survived?
They survived. So.
Now, when you say take out a bunker, what do you throw explosives in there? Or?
Yeah, you go in, you run up, and you get close to it, and you heavily lay down a base fire and throw in grenades if you can get close enough. And that's what I did. So.
And there was a ton of bunkers over there, from what I understand.
Yes, there was all.
I mean,
you name it, they had bunkers everywhere, underground. They had all kinds. They had regular field hospitals underground.
Really?
It was mammoth, some of these caves that they have. So.
all hand dug. I
Hand
assume.
dug, yes. These people were really quite industrious. They were able to do quite a bit of stuff.
Wow. So from there, I assume you go to some hospital and get patched up.
I was picked up, they weren't able to get to us because we were so heavily pinned down that they had to. I had radioed. Matter of fact, I had radioed for the heavy tank, and they were able to make it in and bust the jungle down from another unit.
Oh, really?
They had to bust the jungle down in order to get a medevac in there to get us out.
Wow.
And then they brought the APC to get us out, or me, and they knocked that out with an RPG. So after that, the tanks took over and pretty much took care of the rest of the bunkers and stuff.
I didn't realize that there was too much tank activity over there because of the
more
jungles.
to the north there was. Yeah, more to the north.
Okay.
There was. So then I was, he finally got out. I thought I was going to die, and I could just feel like an hourglass of blood leaving your body.
Really?
And I seen that big red cross from the helicopter, you know, at the LZ landing.
Right.
And there was a 90-30 VAC hospital
Right.
that I went to. So.
Wow. So you go to the medevac hospital. Is this like the MASH unit that we've talked about?
Yes, it's like a MASH unit.
Okay.
They're all there, and my God, they do the job, I tell you. They strip you down and get right to it. I mean, these people and doctors are really dedicated people.
Right.
And they got me out of there, and then I was eventually sent to Camp Zama, Japan. And that's where I wound up with a lot of my operations and stuff. But they had to remove my arm in Vietnam. So.
Right.
So.
Well, we certainly appreciate your service.
It's been a pleasure.
And I know you've given a lot for your country.
No more than anyone else, as far as a soldier or Marine, Air Force, or Navy. So.
Well, we appreciate your service, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Well, thank you, sir.